Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg, Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia, and essayist and commentator Eric Lavine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Lavine, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. And ladies and gentlemen, we have breaking news. The United States and Israel have launched a military campaign against the mullahs in Iran. This is a situation that's long in the coming. It's a historical event. It has the ability to remake the power structure in the Middle East and perhaps and hopefully restore common sense and moderation and the future of the world. Because what we are talking about is not just the Middle East, but we're talking about attacks potentially against Europe, as well as the United States of America and our allies. So let me just bring people up to date. What's happened, the president, in an 8-minute address to the nation in the middle of the night, made it very, very clear that negotiations between Iran and the United States, through its intermediaries, had broken off, that the Ayatollah's regime was not negotiating in good faith. The intelligence information was as follows. They were doing everything they could to restore nuclear weaponry to that regime. They were continuing to arm and support terrorist proxies, and they were building up their ballistic missile capacity. And they had increased all of those efforts incredibly strongly and in a very dangerous way. The president gave every opportunity for negotiations, but the war against the mullahs in Iran is on. This is not a war against the Iranian people. This is against the theocratic, despotic regime that's killed estimated 30 or 40,000 people, their own people, in suppressing the demonstrations against that dictatorship, as well as tens of thousands who are imprisoned. This is a theocracy that brooked no dissent, tortured, killed, executed in public squares their adversaries. Now, why is this important? It's important that this threat to world civilization, to Western civilization, be ended once and for all. These are a death cult. They're dangerous. They're an existential threat to everyone that had to be taken out. The great lessons of our time is that you cannot negotiate with these kinds of people no more than the English could negotiate with Hitler and make a deal that would have a lasting peace. Second lesson is you cannot fight a defensive war. If you're on a defense, you cannot win. And the third great lesson, and this explains the resistance of England and France to get involved and support other than rhetoric, and not even the rhetoric was strong, the United States and Israel. They're scared to death of the infiltration by these Islamist communities in their own countries. They have fifth columns in their own countries that are a threat to the existential survival of England as well as France. So this is dangerous business. President Trump was as good as his word. He set down red lines. He's met those red lines. One can argue about whether these red lines were met in time. I'll defer to my good friend Eric Lavine on that subject. But the fact of the matter is we are now at war with Iran. How long this war will last, whether there will be regime change quickly, I don't know. Whether the Islamic Guard have to be obliterated or if they'll turn sides and support the people of Iran, I don't know. These are all breaking events. But what we do know is once and for all, under the leadership of President Trump, as opposed to the appeasement of previous regimes, starting with Carter, allowing the first Ayatollah to come back from Paris, next with Obama, giving them a green light to build a military program, support terrorists, gave them lots of money, allow them to go forward with their nuclear ambitions, and Biden carrying on that regime of Obama, of appeasement. We now know those days are over. Eric, your thoughts?
So let me start by saying this is how you defend Western civilization and the American-led world order. And let me also say God bless Donald Trump for taking this action. God bless our troops, and may God keep them and the IDF safe in this righteous war against a nihilistic Nazi death cult that is seeking to destroy Western civilization and the American-led world order. This is absolutely the right thing to do. Now, Richard, you said we're now at war. This is where I beg to differ. We have been at war with Iran since 1979, or at least they have been at war with us. The only question has been when we would decide to fight back. They came into being by taking American hostages. They stormed the embassy, kept hostages for 444 days, murdered 241 Marines in the Beirut barracks in 1983, killed over 20 service members in Khobar Towers, are responsible for 1/3 of the dead and wounded in Afghanistan and Iraq, had a direct hand in the bombing of the USS Cole, attempted twice to assassinate the President of the United States, and have been attacking American service members in Syria and Iraq hundreds of times with no retaliation. So this is now we are finally fighting back. This is a regime that seeks to completely undermine American national security interests. So for the United States, the choice was we were going to be at war with them at some point. We were going to fight back. I should say we were going to fight back at some point. And the question is, well, we're going to fight back now when they're militarily weak, economically weak, politically unpopular, or will we, like Obama, Biden, wait until they're financially stronger, they're militarily stronger, and they've successfully crushed political uprisings? I would submit to you that many more Americans and Israelis and Arabs and Iranians have died because of the feckless appeasement of Barack Obama and Joe Biden, and will die, God forbid, if any, will die in this effort for regime change. Let's be honest. This is clearly about regime change, and that is the right goal. This regime was not going to give up its nuclear weapons program. It was not going to give up its ballistic missiles. It was not going to give up its support for international terrorism. It was not going to end its efforts to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. It was not going to it's not going to give up its efforts to unseat the American-led world order and destroy Western civilization. This is absolutely the right thing to do. So in terms of the timing, I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I was saying that this attack would come sometime around Purim. Just historically, it just seemed to rhyme. But in all honesty, what truly seems to have driven it, from what I'm understanding, is our extraordinary intelligence. We apparently were waiting for when the Iranian hierarchy, political and military hierarchy, would be together in one spot. And that's why everyone's saying, why were we attacking during the day? Apparently, that's when the intelligence came down that the Ayatollah and his other henchmen would be in a single spot, much like the Israelis would attack back in June, or when they attacked Hezbollah leadership in Beirut. This is an effort to initially decapitate the regime. I have not yet heard I do know that there have been reports that some of the highest levels of the Iranian government have been killed. We have not heard, or there has not been confirmation as to whether or not the Ayatollah has been killed. Hopefully, he has been, but we don't know yet. For those people who are all bent out of shape about the president taking this action, he absolutely has the authority to do it. Whether you want to use the War Powers Act, as long as he consults with Congress, and there's no question that Marco Rubio has briefed the Gang of Eight, the intelligence, the heads of the intelligence committees in the House and the Senate, and the Foreign Service committees in the House and the Senate. So, and within 60 days, he has to report back. That's assuming the War Powers Act isn't unconstitutional. But even if it is, Trump has 60 days before he has to go back to Congress. So he absolutely has the authority to do this. For those people who are saying, what comes next? This is terrible. People setting their hair on fire. Well, let me say this. The first thing is, unlike Iraq, which was put together artificially by the UK and France after the First World War, of peoples of diverse cultures and histories that had nothing in common, Iran, ancient Persia, is an ancient culture that has a common history, a common language, an established border that has existed for centuries. The idea that it's going to fall apart in the same way as Iraq just doesn't hold water. In terms of the American invasion of Iraq, everybody says, look how difficult it was to mollify Iraq, to stabilize Iraq. Well, let's remember, the primary reason we had trouble stabilizing Iraq is because malevolent actors, particularly Iran, were trying to undermine America, kill Americans, and undermine our efforts to stabilize the country. Iran is no longer there to destabilize Iran. These guys are going to be thrown out in the region. The Arabs are with us. Saudi Arabia has issued a very strong statement supporting the American effort and the Israeli effort attacking Iran.
In that regard,
they were
Eric, in that regard, what I found totally unfathomable is, they want to attack the U.S. bases, so they were attacking Arab countries. They're attacking.
I was just going to make the point. They made a colossal blunder. The Arabs are trying to play it both ways. That's what they typically do, unfortunately. They're not particularly reliable allies. But the Iranians made a tragic for them mistake by attacking Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. They would have been perfectly content to sit it out. But once he attacked the Gulf states, they have now issued the strongest possible terms of support for the American effort. Another thing to keep in mind, unlike when we invaded Iraq, we all remember when Dick Cheney made the unfortunate statement that the Iraqis will come to the street and welcome us like heroes. So our attack was supposed to bring them into the streets. The Iranian people are already in the streets. The Iranian people are already saying, please help us, please help us. We want to topple this regime. So we have finally answered that call. Unlike Obama and Biden, who betrayed these people, led to their, by their silence, caused their death. Trump is acting, so they're already there. People are saying, well, what if the country's going to fall apart? What's going to happen? Well, I'll also make this observation. The only reason that the Israelis were so incredibly successful back in June, and our attack on the American attack on the nuclear facilities was so successful, is because we have incredible intelligence, obviously at the highest levels of the Iranian government. So between Azerbaijan, the Israelis, and ourselves, our intelligence, it would not be surprising to me if we're already in the process of forming a shadow government that will be able to take over when hopefully the Ayatollah's regime falls. So these are very different. And to the people saying, well, what if it falls into a civil war? Well, I'll make this point. Even if it does fall into a civil war, which I don't think it will, but even if it does, a civil war is still far better. Entrenched, nihilistic Nazi death cult, hell-bent on killing Americans and hell-bent on destroying the Jewish state of Israel. And if it does fall into a civil war, because there's so much unanimity of opinion about what should come next, between the United States, our Arab allies, the Israelis, I think we'll have a very strong hand in deciding what comes next and taking the side of a particular party in the civil war. So this is only a good thing. This is only leading to good things. God bless Trump, God protect our troops, and God protect the Israelis.
And I think I agree with everything you said, and I believe that's absolutely essential that the politics of domestic upheaval that we've been observing in the United States be put aside. We need national unity. We need support for our president. We need support for our military men and women who are doing the tough job. This is not a problem that was just going to dissipate by its own accord. The people in Iran who were rising up against the dictatorship did not have the resources to take these people out. They're unarmed, fighting the military, fighting the Revolutionary Guard. They had a police terrorist regime. They couldn't do this on their own. What we're doing here is we're setting up the framework, as General Jack Keane said, the conditions to allow for a change of regime. This has to be regime change. Anything less than regime change means only one thing. There'll come a time when we'll have to fight them because they are a death cult dedicated to our destruction and the domination of world civilization and their view of world civilization, and it had to be stopped. So you fight them when we're stronger and they're weaker. And if we didn't do that, we drew the day. This would have been a lost opportunity, and thank God, as you say, Eric, a lost opportunity that may never have come back. And we should be very thankful that we have strong, courageous leadership. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, essayist Eric Lavine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in about a few moments with more important and interesting conversation.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg, Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia, and essayist and commentator Eric Lavine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. With us is our co-host, Eric Lavine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist, and I am Judge Richard Weinberg. Well, I have to tell you, gentlemen, to give you the following anecdote and to give my age away. When I was a kid, I was a page in the United States House of Representatives, and I attended two State of the Union addresses when President John Kennedy was president of the United States, 1962 and 1963. And I remember vividly and well, even though
I was 4 and 5 at the time.
And Jesse wasn't born. But anyway, I remember vividly and well the respect and the civility that was given the President of the United States by the Republican Party as well as the Democratic Party, even though Jack Kennedy was a Democrat. And as I watched the entire State of the Union address, I said to myself, what is wrong with my old party, the Democratic Party? Have they lost no sense of respect, decency, civility, common sense? And how about even their own political interest? Because if I was doing campaign ads in the fall, if I was in that business, I would be taking pictures of these clowns, Omar, what's the other idiot's name? The one who sits next to Omar.
Rashida Tlaib.
Tlaib.
Oh, Tlaib.
Yeah.
Two people who hate America.
That's right. I mean, the United States representatives, they represent
everything it stands of.
And they can't stand America. They stand for everything against American values and culture, our freedoms, our liberties, a sense of decency. All they are is radical ideologues, and they sit in the Congress of the United States.
They're also Jew haters.
No kidding. But let's get a firsthand report from our esteemed colleague, Chairman Garcia. So you sat there and you watched this, and what was your take on this, both on the politics as well as the issues, Jesse?
Yeah, and if you could tell us about how the atmosphere was in the House, I'd be curious about that as well, that you can't get from
absolutely.
television.
Well, first of all, I do want to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to Congressman Garbarino of the 2nd District of New York, and he's also the Homeland Security Committee Chair. I was his guest, along with that of our 1st District Congressman Nick LaLota. They were fantastic hosts. And just to give some color, being a staffer for a member of Congress, I was a chief of staff. I worked 3 of these events. One was a joint statement to Congress by a dignitary. One was a State of the Union, and the other one was a report to Congress through the first speech that a president gives after being elected. And this is the first one. And the first time I attended him was inside the chamber and not working. It was in 2001, where President George W. Bush and the Republican Speaker and the Republican and the Vice President as the head of the Senate were sitting at the podium of that esteemed chamber. I wanted to go again one more time in my lifetime where the setting was very similar. And I will tell you, the atmosphere was electric from the start. It was a combination of the pomp and circumstance that was coming forward from the president and some of the excerpts that were released ahead of time as prima for of the State of the Union. Certainly, the arrival and the appearance of the gold medal U.S. men's hockey team was very exciting, and that invitation being taken up. And of course, we knew that the Democrats were ceding their house. In fact, they were ceding the public's house by some not attending in protest, which I think is just stupid. I think that if you want to make a case, number one, we should always stand united as a country in that venue. We should always give the respect that Judge you had mentioned to the office, not the individual, but it's always about the office. And quite frankly, from a political point of view, that's where they're going to make their political points in their political hay. But really, from the start, from Jump Street, the Republicans and the galleries too. The gallery was very electric and exciting. So even with some of the Democratic guests up there was that excitement. It was, one or two publications said it was almost a bit of a pep rally. It was almost very similar to what we experienced in Nassau Coliseum during the 2024 election, or maybe Madison Square Garden, except there was more gravity to it because this was the sitting president and this was his State of the Union, where he was going to delineate the policies that have been successful, how they were successful, how they impacted average Americans, and what the future brought to it. So to tell you that there was a lot of electricity in the room, a lot of enthusiasm in the room, the gallery stood more times and joined the Republican majorities and those at the appropriate times when the president, introduced a guest, or of course, policies that were important to them, like the passing of the middle class, the historic middle class tax budget. But I will tell you, just from sitting there as a political leader and someone who hopefully maybe played a little bit, a small, tiny, minute role in making sure that all three of those chambers and all three levels of government, two levels of government are Republican. I do believe that President Trump, and I think the numbers are showing this now, delivered a powerful State of the Union, one that really truly celebrated the heart of our nation. And what I love is that he used everyday Americans to demonstrate how we're achieving the American dream. And I think that both of you were esteemed individuals. It harkens back to, I believe it was President Reagan who truly, if he did not begin the process, really tried to
he started it. He started it. He started the process of inviting guests and using them as perfect examples as part of his narrative. What's funny is that the Democrats there, you can see that America's strength is not measured by the elites or pundits, but by the hardworking people from small towns, countless citizens who preserve and persevere through faith and grit and determination. That's what his speech honored, the millions of Americans whose success is a true testament to this, the promise of this great nation. And by spotlighting real people whose lives have been lifted up through lower costs, strengthened job markets, economic reforms that truly put America first. Those stories reflect how, at least I can bring back and demonstrate how our elected officials are doing that here in Suffolk County and throughout the state of New York, and how we need to change that. But for me personally, it was really a celebration of American exceptionalism, the belief that our nation was founded on liberty and opportunity.
Jesse, as I was watching it, and I think your points are all well taken, the way he honored those two gentlemen, both 100 years old, and giving them the medal, and I said to my wife, "Hey, gee, I guess there's hope for me. Look how good these guys look at 100." I said, but these are real heroes. So he's celebrating American heroes. Second, what he was doing is he was calling out the bad policies that led to the injury and the harm and the and death and destruction of radical left-wing policies, the border, tolerating and coddling criminals. He did that as well. He showed what his policies were about bringing economic opportunity and affordability in the heart of his policies to the American people. So I thought it was terrific. But the best part for me, and I don't think my observation is unique, is that, people call it a trap. And I don't know if
it was a trap.
I don't know if can I tell you something? I don't know if it was, Jesse, and I want to get your thoughts. I don't know if it was a trap. It turned out to be a trap. But the fact of the matter is, why was it so hard for the Democrats in that chamber to stand up and saying that it's more important to support and protect the American people than it is to defend illegal, violent migrants? Why was that such a hard thing to do? Why did they sit on their hands? Why did they sit in their seats? Why weren't they able to stand up and do the right thing? Now, to me, that's a political ad in the making.
Well, I think absolutely. And the reason quite simply is there is such Trump derangement syndrome amongst the Democrats and the far left that they did not even see this coming. It was a perfect opportunity for President Trump, and I've always used as an example, when I tried to win back the county here in Suffolk County, I would use and put before people Republican towns that were run. Compare Republican-run town to the way the Democrats are running their governments. And that's how we were best to demonstrate and earn their vote. We do it right here, we'll do it right here, we'll do it right over there. So what the president did was basically challenge. He paraphrased their oath of office in a way that would clearly delineated for the American people, the 100 million people that were watching this speech, what the Republicans stood for and what the Democrats stood for. And what they did, they didn't stand for anything. They stood for anti-American policies. They stood against their oath, and they sat there on their hands because they did not want to give this president, their derangement syndrome for this president is so strong and so violent, permeates through their very existence, that they had a difficult time to even stand to honor the American heroes, as you said, the 200, the two veterans who are facing 100-year or embracing their 100-year birthday, or as it was the chief warrant officer that led the mission in Venezuela that arrested Maduro. It was at the moment when they sat there in that trap where they did not even stand for a paraphrase of their oath that they realized that they're going to have to stand up for something here and there following that speech. It was a perfect opportunity, a perfect trap laid by this president, because he exposed them for what they are. They are anti-American. They are more about cheap partisan politics. They're not for making it better for the American people. They are better for the wresting of control of power for themselves than they are about making our lives, the average American's life, better and easier.
Well, the question then becomes, and I agree with most of what the two of you are saying. Elizabeth Warren did stand up when he talked about banning insider trading for Congress.
Did Pelosi stand up?
And that was my favorite. that actually was my favorite line of the night. When after
it really
Elizabeth Warren stands up to support that, Trump kind of just throws out there, did Nancy Pelosi stand up? I thought that one was brilliant. I think someone did an analysis. Her investment something outperformed the S&P by like 700%. She never lost on an investment. It was an extraordinary
coincidence. Just extraordinary coincidence.
Exactly, extraordinary coincidence.
And she had nothing to do with giving inside information to her husband. Why would you ever even think that?
Never think that.
The real seriousness of that occurred. That occurred long after. But he issued that challenge. Do you stand with the American people and your oath, or do you stand with if you don't, you stand with the illegal aliens?
I understand. But the question then becomes, as effective as the speech may have been, is it enough? And the speech by itself is obviously not enough. I mean, no matter what kind of State of the Union address somebody gives, people talk about it, and a week later, everyone forgets.
Nobody remembers
it. The question is going to be, how's the economy? He's talking about how his policies, like the big one beautiful bill, are going to impact people's pocketbooks. They're going to start to feel better. They're pay lower taxes. The economy is going to take off. If it happens, Republicans will do well in November. If it doesn't happen, Republicans are going to be eviscerated in November. So while he may have made the Democrats look silly for a night and at certain points during his speech, and it was wonderful how he embraced and engaged true American heroes, it really is only going to matter to the degree that he is predicting that the American people, it's not that he tells the American people things are better, it's that the American people feel that things are better. And if they think things are better by September, we'll win. Republicans will win. If they don't, it's going to be a very long night in November.
You're absolutely right about that, Eric, and we discussed that. The first waypoint, I really do believe, is going to be like in June, July, when most, if not all, of people's deductions and their refunds have been received. That's item number one. I believe that it really is going to be a waypoint for that I'm looking at in terms of this, because when I've tested as a political leader in campaigns the individual parts of the middle class tax cut or the big beautiful bill, whichever one you want to call it at the moment, the individual issues always have a paramount. They always test a lot stronger. It's amazing. It's almost like Trump. You test Trump, his numbers lag sometimes a little bit below. You poll and test his policies, and they go through the roof. So that's why that's why polling needs to change as we go forward.
Yeah, but if you're polling people on the economy, people aren't feeling good about the economy right now. He's below water. He's underwater on how people are feeling about the economy.
That's why I said June. That's why I said June, July is that waypoint where you have to really. That's where you're going to see most of the benefit will be. The other thing I do miss, and if I can be critical of the White House in this case, with a great speech, the great presentation of it, is that I miss the days when presidents, following a major address such as this, a congressional report or a State of the Union or a joint address to Congress, would barnstorm the country to bring their message and bring their policies and the success of those policies to the American people directly. This is a very flamboyant and very theatrical president. He's very much in kin with Ronald Reagan that way. He really, the more he gets out there, I think the better it will be leading up to that first waypoint I speak to you about in terms of June.
I think you're right, Jesse. In fact, I think Susie Wiles, who's the chief of staff, has said that she's going to get him out there on the hustlings. And, for those people, and then we have to take a break, for those people who say this is a midterm election, it's really not about Donald Trump, I disagree. Of course it's about Donald Trump.
Of course it is.
It's about Donald Trump's policies.
It's always about that.
It's always about the president.
Because, and also the Democrats make him the issue. So if they're going to make Trump the issue, to Jesse's point, then you would, and to Eric's point, if you're going to make it about Trump as the issue, you have to join in what has he accomplished? What's the message of accomplishment which makes us a safer, more prosperous country with more opportunity against the bad policies that got us into trouble? Because the Democrats got us into the hole and he's digging us out. So give us a break when you say Trump is the enemy of this country. He's one of the great patriots we've ever seen, and we're lucky to have him as president. Do I agree with everything Donald Trump does or says? Absolutely not, because I'm not a Trumpy. But I am telling you, this country is far, far better off having Trump in the White House doing his policies than having the Democrat-led Congress and White House and what they've done. They made us unsafe. They destroyed the economy. They divided this country. And shame on them, as Donald Trump said. So we have to take a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, just back from Washington, where he sat there in the gallery at the State of the Union.
His knees will never be the same.
That's right. Eric Lavine, our attorney, commentator, and essayist, whose knees are shaking right now in the studio. And I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in but a few moments with more interesting and important conversation. Stay tuned.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg, Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia, and essayist and commentator Eric Lavine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Lavine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So I want to raise this issue with you, gentlemen. Now, I'm going to see if I can raise this issue without Eric saying, but you're not a Democrat.
You're not a Democrat.
Oh, see that? I can't win. I can't even get it out. All right. So I'm not. Yes, I am a registered Democrat, and I'd like to see my party become common sense and centrist again. It may be hoping against all realistic facts on the ground that'll ever happen again in my lifetime. But a guy can hope, can't he? So let me tell you what my problem is as we enter the midterm elections. Trump and the Republicans do very well on the issues, but yet in the so-called generic ballots, they're having tough races in the United States Senate. They're having very tough races in the United States House of Representatives. I still believe they'll hold on to the Senate. I'm very concerned about whether they'll hold on to the House. I think it's absolutely essential to have both the House and the Senate in the hands of the Republicans so they can back Trump and not have these idiots, faction, the radical left, Islamist faction in the Congress, try to impeach him, have ridiculous hearings against him, and try to stymie all of his efforts to try to protect and defend this country and move the country forward. And I'm worried about that. You have to have support for the president. You cannot have these people nipping at his heels, especially when they do not have a policy agenda that's positive for the American people or for this country. It's all about hating Trump, as Jesse points out. So what have they done? They've gotten very clever. They start a marketing campaign. I call it the marketing of Democratic politicians. It's all gimmicks, marketing. They get these people who have military backgrounds or intelligence backgrounds, and they dress them up. And they say, we're just like you folks. We have the same values. We're just swell. We're common sense moderates. We're the real Democrats. We're not the left-wing radical extremists. You can trust us. Well, that's great rhetoric, but the reality belies that. You have Spangenberger elected governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. You have Sherrill, who's elected the state of New Jersey as governor, both coming out of the Congress. And what do they both share in common? Their package is moderates, and their governor is radical leftists. High taxes, no support for public safety and law and order, no support for federal policies of containing illegal migrants who are violent and dangerous to the public safety, all about taxes, regulation, destroying productivity, and economic opportunity. These are dangerous people. You have this character whose name I keep repressing, guy from the state of Maine. Who has
Graham Plattner.
Right. And what is he most notable for? A swastika on his chest. Now, what is a swastika? But the symbol of Nazi Germany, of the worst kind of fascism that led to the death of...
Be nice. He claimed he didn't know what it meant.
Of course, nobody knows what it means because he never watched a World War II movie. Look, he's supposed to be an oyster fisherman, a man of the people. He's wonderful. He's just swell. He's your next door neighbor. I have a friend who has a house in Maine, thinks he's a lovely guy. I said, do me a favor. I love you. You're my friend. I don't want to even talk about it. This guy is dangerous. You elect people like that to the Senate of the United States. What you're doing is you're putting in dangerous people into powerful positions who do not support this country. Do not tell me when you have a swastika on your chest that you stand for American values, tolerance, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and a view that the world order must be protected in terms of Western civilization. I don't want to hear that.
And he still has to beat the sitting governor in a primary. He actually is going to beat a sitting governor in a Democratic primary.
Right. And the biggest problem is, to me, as the House Democrat, you have Susan Collins, who is a Republican, a common sense, decent, lovely person, one of the smartest, best members of the United States Senate, has seniority, a brilliant woman, a lovely woman, a woman you can trust to always try to do the right thing, and you're going to beat her with this rube, with this swastika on his chest, this oyster farmer who says he doesn't know what a swastika is and will package himself as a wonderful guy, and yet he's going to vote with the lefties and the radical Islamists? Give me a break. Eric.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Democratic playbook, what you described. People weren't as quote-unquote moderates, but moderates as compared to what? You want to be a moderate compared to communist Jew hater Zohar Mamdani? I mean, basically anybody can be moderate compared to him. But at least with Zoran, I mean, there's truth in advertising. He's a communist and he hates Jews, and he's right out there with it. He doesn't hide it. And
right.
So same thing like with AOC. I mean, you're gonna have AOC is gonna probably primary Chuck Schumer, assuming the guy decides to run again. I think he's dead man walking, but assuming he runs for Senate again and she primaries him, there's really no difference in the policies that they'll advance. She'll just be honest about it. Chuck has no core. He has no moral values. He has no compass. So he'll do whatever the Democratic radical left, the Democratic socialists tell him to do. Not because he believes it, only because he thinks it's good for Chuck Schumer. That's the only thing he runs on. So at least with someone like AOC, she's honest about her anti-Semitism. She's honest about her socialism. So there's a much more truth in advertising. I have far more respect for AOC than I do for Chuck Schumer. So and then at least the Republicans can then say, you see, this person ran as a radical lefty and is governing as a radical lefty. But you have someone like Chuck Schumer or Governor Sternberger or Governor Sherrill. These people are liars. They say they are bait. They are a giant bait and switch. But that's the strategy.
But the Federal Trade Commission should sue them for false advertising.
But in many respects, certain times Republicans are our worst enemies. Look what's going on in Texas.
The worst, just the worst.
This is horrible. John Cornyn is a great senator.
Truly.
John Cornyn is a terrific senator. He's a great guy. He's a great Republican. He's a great conservative. He's a great patriotic American. And right now, if they're currently early voting in the primary for the Republican senator, he may well lose to the Attorney General. Was it John Paxton? Is John his first name? Paxton. Paxton's a bad guy.
Ken Paxton.
Ken Paxton, you're right. Ken Paxton's a bad guy. I mean, it's an open question as to whether or not he should be in prison for some of his unethical behavior while in office. And if he gets the nomination, he may well lose the general election in Texas.
In Texas.
In Texas. I mean, we're not talking about New Jersey.
And to whom?
Well, that may be the only thing that saves the seat. The Democrats are almost as insane as the Republicans are. I mean, there's this code death wish. The Democrats may nominate this woman Crockett, who's insane, who hates America, who hates Jews, who's as radical left as Zoran Mamdani and AOC. They actually may nominate her. So you're going to have Crockett versus Paxton. Talk about the Lone Star State. Maybe they should just secede because these are crazy people on both sides. I wish the president would just endorse John Cornyn so that he can win the nomination. And if Cornyn would win the Republican nomination, he wins that seat in the general election in a walk. He'll win it by 15 points, 20 points. But he's left fighting for his life in this primary because Republicans, I can't even explain it.
Well, I'll explain it to you. I put this problem directly to Donald Trump. Donald Trump should have gotten hold of Paxton, and I forget the gentleman's name, the incumbent congressman, also is a three-way race, the African-American.
Wesley Hunt.
Right.
Talk about it. It's extremist.
Look, what they should do, you're Trump, you have Cornyn, who's voted with you about 80% of the time. He doesn't have to be with you 100%.
Probably more.
Probably more. He's part of the leadership. John Thune, the majority leader of the Senate, wants him. He's
endorsed by the NRSC?
Yeah, I mean, he's working to achieve the Trump agenda to protect and defend his country. Leave the guy alone. You should have taken Paxton, and what's the other guy's name again?
Wesley Hunt.
Wesley Hunt. Take them for a walk around the block and say, this is not your year. Get out of this race. Cornyn is my guy. Why Trump does this stuff is beyond me. It's bad politics and it's bad governance when you need the support of these people in the Senate and the House. What do you think, Jesse?
Well, just to go to Texas, there must be something in the water going on there because there was a big scrum for the congressional seat that was held by Republicans for like 25 years, a generation, and it was lost just recently in a handful of votes because of Republican infighting. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I do hope that, as you both say, that the president does weigh in on that primary for
the election's next week.
Early voting is going on now.
Yeah, early voting is on now, and the election, I think, is on the 3rd? Tuesday the 3rd?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. So this is serious.
I was not aware.
But there may be a runoff. Wesley Hunt may force it into a runoff between Paxton and
exactly.
Cornyn. So they'll both have to spend millions of dollars in a primary that they can't spend in a general.
Terrible. It's terrible politics.
But just to go back to the original question about these Democrats being repackaged, Governor Spanberger of Virginia, we mentioned Governor Sherrill of New Jersey, which I really appreciated, was booed unmercifully by the New Jersey Devils fans when they were on Wednesday night when they took to the ice for the first time and they were honoring members of, of course, Jack Hughes and Thompson of the Sabres during that hockey game for their gold medal win, and the cascade of boos that came down really does tell you what's going on here. The other issues are, you're absolutely right. These individuals, Spanberger, Sherrill, and others, they've campaigned as moderate Democrats, but they're really governing like Mandami socialists. Just in Spanberger's response to his State of the Union address, she was in support of the school walkouts over ICE. She spoke about affordability and the importance of affordability, while at the same time she's raising taxes. It sounds a lot like what we've been seeing here with Mandami. He speaks about affordability while he is threatening, the community that's at least able to deal with a 9.6% increase in their property taxes if he doesn't get his political extortion out of Governor Hochul in Albany with even higher taxes. These are more individuals that are like Newsom, Mandami, Healy of Massachusetts. But the real, one of the other critical issues here that we have to, as individual Americans, have to take note is that legacy media, that mainstream media machine that is not for American patriotism, American exceptionalism, an American world-led order. They're not for an American alliance with Israel. They want to almost make America become more of European in their governing and in their philosophies, something that we've broke away from and have been rather successful for 244 years.
Yeah, how are the Europeans doing, Jesse?
Years.
How are they doing?
Yeah, they're not doing too well with their energy costs through the roof, unemployment at record numbers, their exact civilization being erased before them because of their open borders and such an unchecked immigration. That is not the solution. The legacy media is responsible for this because, again, they do not subscribe to the philosophies of the Republican Party or Republican elected officials. And you know what? That amounts to the most conservative Republican, the Trump Republican, or even the more moderate Republicans. In the end, the legacy media and those special interests that care more about power, influence, and greed are going to do everything they need to try and repackage the Democrats into something that's palatable to the American people. And what it is, it's a bait and switch. It's absolutely a bait and switch because these individuals are not governing for the people they represent. They're governing for the next political milestone that they want to reach. And I mean, when you look at individuals like Governor Newsom of California, who goes to Georgia and then tries to dumb himself down so he can make himself more in tune with in his mind, he was making himself attuned with African Americans. He said, "I'm stupid like you."
Exactly. What a great campaign! What a great persuasive argument. I'm sign up to get that T-shirt production, Jesse. You make a fortune on that.
Absolutely.
I'm as dumb as you are. Vote for me.
Yep, exactly. But I mean, that just demonstrates it. That's why us as Americans, it's on top of us. It's on us. We have to cut through what we're being fed by the mainstream media. We have to be judicious in our own exploration of the candidates, the parties, and the philosophies. Because 9 out of 10 times, I'm telling you, we're successful in elections because we're right on the issues. We're right on 90-10 issues, and we're right on even the more difficult decisions that those in political power and governmental power have to make for the betterment of the whole. The Democrats, they're not even good on issues like 90-10 issues, such as no boys and girls sports. Or how about photo ID for voting? Something that 90% of the people agree, 83% of the registered Democrats believe, but no way, Democrats can't do that because A, Donald Trump is saying it. Number two, it may affect some electoral systems, may affect the corruption that exists and is abused on a regular basis.
Unless you're shoveling snow. I mean, I love this. This is one of the greatest things. This is one of the greatest things of all time. We had all this snow in New York. Zohran Mamdani decided we need more emergency shovelers because I screwed up the first snowstorm so badly. We need more emergency shovelers. So if you want to be an emergency shoveler, he says, come to XYZ address, but you must bring 2 IDs with you in order to be allowed to shovel snow. But if you want to vote, just show up. No IDs.
And
don't even be registered.
Same day registration.
You don't even
just bust them in. Register that day.
Show up. But if you want to shovel snow, you need 2 IDs. It's remarkable.
It's a very scary proposition when you realize that the future Western civilization is under attack, and we're dealing with common sense values that just can't be adhered to. I mean, the idea, for example, to me, that parents are being denied the knowledge to know that their kids are having a gender identity crisis at young ages as minorities, meaning they're less than 18 years of age, and the schools won't tell you.
Right, and regardless of what your view is on the issue, the idea that parents would be frozen out of that decision is just outrageous.
It is.
It is outrageous.
And when Trump said, Jesse, and you saw it, when he looked at the Democratic side, he said, these people are crazy. That is just crazy. That's the definition of crazy. Kids at that age, they're still going through identity crisis. They're trying to figure out who they are, where they fit in the world. Once they have these radical body-altering surgeries and the hormones they get, my God, you can't bring them back to a degree of normalcy. I mean, and kids then become suicidal when they realize they've made this vast mistake that can't be remedied with popping a couple of pills. They have to have more surgeries and more surgeries and more surgeries. They've made a cottage industry. Hospitals and doctors and health care plans, insurance companies made an industry of getting these people to be butchered, because that's what it is. They're being butchered. But if you want to make the decision to go through this because you really honestly believe you're born a boy but you're really a girl, don't make that decision at 14, 15 years of age.
And certainly don't make it without parental consent.
Listen, parents love their children.
I remember I couldn't even get an aspirin in school without my parents.
You still can. You still can. Yeah, exactly.
I thought maybe they changed that too because
no. You can get chopped up, but you can't have an aspirin.
Exactly.
I mean that's really common sense. So when Trump looks over those people, and says these people are crazy, he has a point. I have 1 minute.
That was an amazing moment in that speech as well.
Yeah,
because it was off the cuff and truly captured the the leadership and the new governing wing of the Democratic Party.
Well,
they're crazy.
Look. I think, and I have to end this now because I've gotten the signal from the booth, but I just want to make this last comment before we sign off. This is a valuable lesson to us all. We have to get involved. We have to pay attention. We have to fight the good fight. We have to protect common sense values and institutions and policies. If we don't do that, then everything is going to be lost. The future of this country and the future of our children are going to be lost. We have to pay attention. This is one of the most important lessons we have to learn. It's not the other guy's job. It's all of our job to pay attention to what's going on there. Stand up, fight for the right things. Do not let those people, externally or internally, who would subvert this great country and destroy it and all its accomplishments because of indifference or just too busy or it's somebody else's job. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, essayist Eric Lavine. I am Judge Richard Weinberg. We want to thank you once again for listening to us. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. We'll be back next week for more important, interesting conversation. In the meantime, God bless you, God bless your families, and always, of course, God bless our great country, America. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Let the Record Show with Judge Weinberg, Chairman Jesse Garcia, and Eric Lavine. You can hear Let the Record Show Sunday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.